When Alabama's Supreme Court defined frozen embryos as children, the shock and confusion was immediate. Major hospitals pulled fertility services and would-be parents scrambled for clarity on what would happen next. The debate over reproductive rights in America has long been driven, in part, by opposition to abortion from Christian groups. But this ruling has divided that movement and ignited debate about the role of theology in U.S. lawmaking. Short presentational gray line Margaret Boyce is soft-spoken, a private person, and certainly not, in her words, a crier. She had been taking fertility drugs for 10 months and was days away from her first appointment for in-vitro fertilisation, IVF, when the justices of Alabama's top court upended her life. Their ruling, which prompted many fertility clinics to pause their work, has left her turning to the Bible daily for comfort. The 32-year-old and her husband have a young boy, but, second time round, she is experiencing unexplained infertility. Building a family has always been the dream. "I'm one of 3. I feel like it's the greatest gift to give your child a sibling," she said. The journey to becoming parents is different for every single couple, mentally, emotionally, and financially, she added, welling up. This ruling has added more unnecessary anxiety to something that is already so hard. For a devout Christian like Margaret, the ruling, given its consequences for what she sees clearly as a process to create life, is even more difficult to comprehend. "God," she said, "tells you to go forth and be fruitful and multiply." IVF is a difficult and lengthy treatment, involving the fertilization of a woman's eggs with sperm in a lab to create a microscopic embryo. The fertilized embryo is then transferred into a woman's uterus, where it may create a pregnancy, but a successful outcome is not guaranteed. Embryos are often frozen or eventually destroyed as part of IVF, which accounts for around 2% of U.S. pregnancies. The Alabama court ruled that an existing law, wrongful death of a minor, covers not just fetuses in the womb, but embryos held in a lab or storage facility too. It did not explicitly restrict or ban IVF, but it has still created deep uncertainty for clinics and medical workers who handle embryos and fear prosecution. In recent days, the Office of the State's Attorney General said he had no intention of pursuing criminal charges against IVF clinics. But one clinic told the BBC this statement lacked detail and did not quell their fears. Short presentational gray line. While the majority of the justices rooted their ruling in law, Chief Justice Tom Parker also had a higher authority in mind, repeatedly invoking Scripture in explaining his decision. "The people of Alabama," he wrote in a concurring opinion, "had adopted a theologically based view of the sanctity of life in their state constitution." Delving into religious sources from classic Christian theologians like St. Thomas Aquinas and also a modern conservative Christian manifesto, he concluded that even before birth, all human beings have the image of God, and their lives cannot be destroyed without effacing His glory. Some anti-abortion groups celebrated the explicit use of Scripture in Justice Parker's opinion to justify what for them was a momentous decision. Tony Perkins, president of evangelical activist group the Family Research Council, described it as a beautiful defense of life. But the Chief Justice's theocratic justification has left Margaret puzzled. She doesn't believe in abortion, but she also struggles to see a frozen embryo as a living person. For her, life begins with a heartbeat. "Nobody understands more that an embryo is not a child," she said, before taking a pause, "than the person yearning for that embryo to be a child." U.S. courts do sometimes make decisions that seem to be based on religious premises, said Meredith Render, a professor at the University of Alabama School of Law. But, she added, rarely do you see it as explicitly stated as in the Chief Justice's opinion. Alabama 40F Roe, an election year political bombshell Trump calls on Alabama to protect IVF treatment. The ruling was, however, not an outlier for a conservative court in a red state, said Kelly Baden, the vice president for public policy at the Guttmacher Institute, which tracks abortion legislation across the U.S.